Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we're actually going to remake my most popular dress, and I'm going to talk about it in just a second again, but I am so excited to share this one specifically with you because we're going to improve a lot on the design and actually make it a cute little summer dress. So if you're interested in that, then keep on watching. Okay, so this for sure is not a video about swimsuits, as I announced like I think 2 weeks ago already, but I tried out and made mock-ups, and swimsuits and I are apparently not gonna get friends anytime soon. I made these high-waisted pants. They look somewhat good. There's still room for improvement, but that's it basically. I mean, what the hell is that? And then I also made the swimsuit that I showed you on my Insta already. It still needs to be improved overall because I'm not happy yet with it, and I don't want to share anything that I'm not 100% happy with, especially if I'm going to upload the pattern. And that's why today we're going to make something completely different. And I guess this has been my most requested pattern of all time, because today we're gonna remake my most popular dress and I'm gonna finally give you the pattern for it. So I prepared a little something because I also improved the pattern. There is, if you don't know what I'm talking about, click in the eye right here and watch that video before this one, so you know what dress I am talking about. And for everybody else who knows what the dress looks like, today we're going to make this one again in a different version. So I went ahead on Illustrator and improved the design of the pattern. I still have to do a tiny bit of pattern work here on the board, on the cutting board, but we're gonna do that together. So the first thing that I did, remember that I had these teeth kind of looking pattern pieces, so I cut the whole root part of the teeth off. You can see right here in the video, and I just made a bodice pattern that goes up until the waistline, and then on the waistline we're gonna put a circle skirt on. Today we're gonna make it easier. It still has the same look, but it's not as complicated. The lace up in the back, we're still going to do that, but this dress is going to have a zipper in the side seam, the left side seam, so you can easily go in and out of it without having to undo the lacing, because that was a big thing in the original dress, that it was so hard to actually do that. So that's improved. And yeah, then it just is a matter of what type of fabric do I want to use. So I was thinking about velvet. I would love to make this dress out of velvet. The skirt is gonna be only knee length, so 50 centimeters long. So it's not gonna use that much fabric. This is actually the pattern piece, and I'm not sure if I have enough fabric for that, but I'm gonna check it, and if I can, I'm gonna make it out of velvet. If not, I'm gonna do some summery stuff. So let's go ahead and do that. So I just previously mentioned that I still have to do some pattern work. When I looked back at the photos, I thought that the boob area was kind of open on the sides, that it didn't fit my boob size as it should. So I am just going ahead right there, putting the pattern pieces together as they will be once the bodice is sewn together, and then just making the cutout less. Basically, that's all I'm doing. So I'm just making that neckline a bit higher under the arm, and this should resolve the problem of my boobies coming out on the sides. Nothing against side boob action, love that, but for me personally it was just a little bit too much. But anyways, once done with that, I am continuing to cut out my pattern pieces. That's the circle skirt that I was showing you before. It's half a circle skirt for one full skirt. And it actually fits perfectly on a standard width 140 meter fabric if you lay it on fold, because the front, which is actually the side, is to be cut on fold so that you can have one complete piece for the full half circle skirt, whatever you want to call it. And then also I went ahead and cut out the rest of the pattern pieces for my outer bodice. There will be the facing that I still need to cut out of my velvet. This, by the way, is polyester velvet. I would always suggest to use natural fabrics, but that is the only velvet that I had at home because I used this one for some pillows that I made for my apartment. And also I cut out 4 selvage to selvage 3 centimeters wide strips that I will be using for the lacing in the end. Once done with that, I also went ahead and cut out some interlining out of thicker or medium to thick cotton canvas. This is just my mock-up fabric. Nothing of this color or the fabric at all will show in the end, so it doesn't really matter. Alternatively, you can also use interlining that you iron onto your piece. I didn't want to do that with the velvet though, because I don't have the specific ironing surface thing that you need to iron velvet correctly, because otherwise you're just gonna ruin the bristles on the fabric and it's not gonna look nice. So I went with the interlining. For me, that just was the best option available, and I basted all of the pattern pieces together so that you always have only one layer of fabric more or less to work with. And the first step in sewing the complete bodice together is closing the center front. So I just go ahead and sew that seam, as at least the bodice part of the dress will have a lining. There is no need to actually overlock or to serge any of the seams, because it will all be covered up in the end. So follow through with the following steps for all of the seams that are to come. Sew the seam together and then iron the seam flat and open so that everything lays nice and tidy. I just continue with the front dividing seam, which goes over the bust. So there is a notch in the pattern, but I do recommend to always start from the waistline sewing towards the neckline. It's for some reason just so much easier to match the notches up. I tried both versions and it just never worked when I worked my way down towards the waistline. Just for your information, just do it from the waist up. It's so much easier. I continue to iron my seams and then sew the next seam onto this. This is actually where I make the mistake of sewing the left side seam shut as well. As there will be a zipper in the left side seam, you obviously only have to sew the right side seam together, so not that one. Keep that in mind. The description will be accordingly in the pattern listing. So in the sewing instructions, there will be, of course, stated that you only need to sew the right side seam together. And then you can continue with the back dividing seams. You can put both of them together, and then also the center back seam that you need to put together. So the opening that here is my center back will hopefully, if you did it right in your dress, be the left side seam where the zipper will be attached. But anyways, continuing on, I am cutting out my lining pieces out of this beautiful mint green cotton poplin. I used this before for the jumpsuit that I made a couple of weeks ago, and I think it turned out so cute, so I can highly recommend you watch that video as well. I will link it up here in the eye if you're interested. So in the pattern, the facing and the lining will look a tiny bit different because I actually tried the pattern out right there, and I thought it was quite difficult to sew because of all the curves, and there is also the corner in there. So I went ahead and detached the center back facing piece from that M-shaped facing out of the velvet and made it a second pattern piece, so you will have 2 facing pieces in the end. I continue to put the lining pieces together, so that is one piece. Keep in mind to leave the left side seam open, because I also did the mistake right there that I forgot that I wanted to put a zipper in. So leave that open and put the center back instead together. So it will still be one like flat thing that you can put on the table, but the opening will be somewhere else. Anyways, you know what I mean. Then you can attach the facing to the lining minus the center back pieces, because those are separate. You will be putting the upper corner of facing and lining together first, and then once that is done, you can put the back pieces of the facing onto the complete facing and lining piece that you previously did. So you will have to put the upper corner together like I am showing you right here, but I am putting a small diagram or a small description right here actually where you can see what I mean. So you have all of this, which I will be providing for you, and then you will have to sew together, first of all the red seams. So those are the lining seams that I put together. Then the blue, which is the facing and lining seam, and then you will put the green, which is the back facing seam that I talked about. And leave the yellow, which is the zipper, open. Okay, a hell lot of confusion. Very sorry about that, but I really messed it up right here. I was so into the whole sewing process, and for some reason, probably because of the low back, I was so much focused on, oh yeah, the back is gonna be open, but of course it's not. So sorry about that. I hope that the instructions, the written instructions that will be in the pattern will be a bit more clear than my rambling right here, because I think I'm confusing more than I am helping. So sorry about that. Anyways, at some point you're gonna have to iron the facing and lining seams. What I do, and what you probably also will have to do, even though the curves won't be as crazy as mine are, you will have to cut into the seam allowance so everything will lay flat. That is a common thing that you do in sewing all the time, so do not worry about this. You would cut towards the seam that you did, so that once you iron it, the seam allowance eases a bit more into place. Otherwise, it just doesn't have enough stretch in the fabric to just lay flat. Next up is the lacing, actually. So the first thing that I do is actually put all of the strings that I cut out before together to make one long string. And then I put a piece of cotton cord. Usually I like to use some strong cotton yarn, but I didn't have any yarn around. I don't know where it went, but I am using this cord right now, which is also totally fine. Just make sure it's not any bigger than the actual tube is supposed to be in the end. So mine is supposed to be 5 millimeters. So make sure that the cord or the string, whatever you're using, is not thicker than that. Once sewn all the way along the edge of the strips, you can actually just pull on the cord or the yarn and it will turn inside out. I'm talking about my method that I'm using all the time, this one. I am using this literally for all the straps that I need in any of my projects. I'm talking more in detail about that in the original yellow dress video that I am basing this on. But yeah, that's also how I'm doing it here, and oh my god, it was such a workout to get this turned inside out, because this is velvet, right? And velvet likes to stick to velvet, or it's not really like going smoothly, I would say. So this was quite a workout for my arms. I managed to do it somehow, so this is actually the complete lace that I have for this project. I then cut off two 30 centimeter straps that I will be using for my straps. I found that 30 centimeters was a good length, especially if you have the lacing in the back. You can try to not do the lacing and just use this as a back cutout dress if you want to, but I think then you would need some straps that are a bit shorter. I'm not sure, you have to fit it yourself. That was just an idea I had right now. I continue to iron the straps actually, but from the wrong side. They will be on the skin, and it worked out fine. Like, I'd rather have an ironed strap and maybe some distorted fabric than a non-ironed twisted strap or whatever. So I pinned this to the corners in the front and the back, and then continue to pin the facing with the lining right sides together with the outer bodice. And you might see also in the video, but especially once you're doing it yourself, the facing is a tiny bit smaller than the actual bodice, and that is supposed to be like that because in the end it will help you lay how it's supposed to lay, because since the facing and lining is a tiny bit smaller, it's not gonna bulge to the outside on the corners, so it will actually help you hide the seams on the inside, which you can also hold in place with an understitch. I'm not doing that for this project though, because the spikes, or like where the straps are coming out in the front and back, they're so steep, like they're such crazy edges that you can't even understitch it anymore, like you're not gonna reach. So I just left it. You can try to understitch the underarms and probably the front, the center front, but no need actually really for it because the pattern already does all the work for you. So once the upper corner, the neckline basically, is sewn together with the facing and the lining, it's time to turn everything over, and we need to prepare the bodice for that. First of all, we will be cutting down the seam allowance where the straps are attached, so basically in all the corners, just for it to fold over a bit better. And then also we're going to cut into the seam allowance again, so towards the seam that we previously stitched, just to make it easier for the fabric to ease into the curves. And then it's time to turn everything over, this time as we did it correctly, not like in the first video, but I talked about that in there. We can use the straps to actually pull out all of the corners, and it's pretty easy. And now comes the realization that I completely forgot about putting a zipper into the side seam. So here you can see me undoing the stitches for the side seam. As you can see right there, the facing is one piece, so I will have to cut into the facing, then just make do without the seam allowance. It's fine. I was just a tiny bit annoyed by it. Generally, there is no use to be annoyed over stuff like that. It just happens. So for me to rescue the whole situation was just to close the center back, which you should have already done. So this is nothing that you need to do still. And now it's time to put the skirt on. So the skirt should be one piece because the pattern itself should fit on the fabric that is folded in half. And then you can just cut out the skirt on fold and you should have one full skirt piece. You pin it onto the bodice, only the bodice, not the lining, because we're gonna use it to finish the zipper in just a second. And there should be notches in the pattern that indicate where to pin it to the bodice, so center front, center back, and also side seams. And then you just sew it on all the way around onto the bodice. And I just want to use the time of me sewing the bodice and skirt pieces together to say that the finish of this seam that you will see me doing after I put the zipper in just a second is not the usual way to do this, because you can actually finish all of this without any seams showing and without the use of an overlocker. But I didn't want top stitches, so for me this wasn't an option, because you will see one top stitch in the end if you use the normal method. But anyways, continuing on with the zipper, so you should have your inseam zipper that is in a matching color, and we just pin one side on. There is the previously ironed fold in the neckline, and you have a plastic stopper in the zipper, so make sure to place the stopper just under that visible fold of your neckline and then pin it accordingly, and also put the seam allowance down. Now this is important because this is only if you choose my seam finishing that I was just talking about. If you use the normal seam finishing where no seam in the end will show, you need to iron your seam allowance of your waist up. And you also need to stitch it up once you attach the zipper, just for your info. There should be a notch around 15 centimeters lower than the waistline of your skirt. When you reach that point, you stop sewing the zipper in, that's enough. And then I like to use some pins to just indicate a few spots, like that end of the zipper and then also the waistline and also the neckline, and I use it just to mirror exactly the spots on that one zipper band to the other, because it looks so much better if you match up all of those spots, because that's like a dead giveaway that you made it yourself or that something is wrong with that dress. So keep that in mind. I use this and it works very well for me. I also like to pin the zipper band in and then close it and see if everything worked out. This also helps me very much, and then I can repin it if something is wrong. And once that's done, I stitch it on. Next step is to close the side seam of the skirt, and there is obviously the zipper that we just put in, so we are just stitching about 1 centimeter or something like that lower than the end of the zipper. That way you can make sure that the transition between the zipper band and the actual seam is smoothly, and you can also try to iron it out a bit better if you were to have anything not correct there. But this way, to me at least, it's the easiest. Also, I am shortening my zipper band. You just need to bar tack a stopper basically on the lowest end on the zipper band, and then you can just cut it off when the zipper obviously is closed, because otherwise you're gonna cut off the wrong side. I continue to press the side seam a bit with the iron. I try to press it on the right side of the fabric. Wouldn't recommend. If you can iron it in the direction of where the bristles of your fabric go, it's fine, but just to an extent, so I would not do it if you can. Once the zipper is in and everything looks nice, I am attaching my facing to the zipper band. You just need to turn around basically the facing to the right side of your bodice, and then you can just stitch that to the zipper band. And I like to just check if everything sits correctly by turning it over again and then just see if everything is where it's supposed to be, especially at the fold of the neckline. That's like one spot where you could make a mistake right there. And then I turn it around back again and put it under my sewing machine while using one-sided foot that works best for me, and then just stitching it on. For my finishing type of the waist seam, I stop around 2 centimeters higher than the raw edge of my lining. That is just due to the fact that I want to overlock everything in one go. Usually, if you were to stitch it correctly, you would fold the lining seam allowance 1 centimeter up, like to the inside, as I am showing you right here, and then pin everything like this, you know, like all the seam allowances go up into the bodice. You just pin it, and then you would top stitch it all around from the right side of your bodice. And that way everything would be tucked away nice and tidy, but you would have a top stitch. You could potentially stitch in the ditch and try to somehow mask the stitch. I really don't like that method, and for me, for some reason, there's always like a top stitch visible. That's why I just chose to overlock the whole seam and not have a top stitch on the outside. Okay guys, I just put the dress on as it is right now, and this is what it looks like. I am absolutely in love with how this looks. This is what the back looks like. As you can see, I haven't put the lace in yet, and as you can see, it looks really, really good as well. And honestly, I kinda like it more without the lace up in the back. I will put it in the back nevertheless though, because I have been talking about it the whole video through, and also it's a big part of the look of the dress, so don't worry about that. We're gonna continue and go through with the plan as I want to. But as you can see, it holds up. The straps hold up without the lacing in the back. So if this is something that you consider, the lace up is not needed. It is literally just an aesthetic detail, which I will be doing right now. If you decide not to do the lace up, then you obviously don't need 4-meter long tubes for the lacing in the back. You just need 60 centimeters, because these here, the straps are 30 centimeters each, with seam allowance already included of 1 centimeter on either side, so 28 centimeters without the seam allowance are these straps, and as you can see, they hold up really, really well. So this is right now the status of the dress. You could leave it like this if you like. We still need to hem the skirt, but that's something really, really fast. And we're gonna continue with the lacing in the back. And for the lacing, we are going to take our back pattern piece, because there are the spots where the eyelets are gonna go into. And I like to just indicate the spots with some pins, just because then I don't have any paper flying around. So do that on both sides. Your pattern piece is gonna look a tiny bit different, like a tiny bit neater, I would say, not like mine. But that's fine, it's the same thing. And then I just punch some holes in it and put some metal eyelets into the whole bodice. In total, I'm using 16 eyelets. I'm using 6mm diameter eyelets, which look really, really nice. They work very good with the 5mm straps that I already prepared. You can obviously do any method of eyelets that you like. You can hand stitch them, but if you do metal eyelets, please follow the instructions on those, because they all work differently somehow, and I don't know which ones you're using. You should end up with eyelets that look something like this though. And that's honestly already the hardest work on the dress, in my opinion at least. At least I didn't have to hand sew these eyelets like the ones in the last dress that I made. Yeah, well, next step is to just lace up the back. I am putting a pin in the middle of my straps, so it's easier for me to know that both sides are the same length. And then I just lace up the back. You can honestly do the lace up however you want. If you know any decorative lace up methods, go ahead, do you. I'm just doing a classic one, I don't know, I guess, but whatever. So the 4 meters that I have are literally perfect for the amount of eyelets, so the amount of crisscrossing that this dress needs. And you should be able to tie a really cute bow tie at the end of the dress. And it came out looking really, really nice. Actually, the video that you saw me when I put the dress on without the lacing was before I knew that what the lacing would look like. But now that I'm recording this, it looks really, really nice with the lacing as well. So I'm not really, I can't really decide which version I like better, honestly. Maybe I'm just gonna have to make both versions and then I have both dresses. I don't know. The last thing to do is just to hem the skirt. I like to fold my hem twice, 5mm, and then just top stitch it all the way around. And that's it for today's video already. Of course, I'm gonna show you how the dress looks like worn in just a second. But before we get into that, I just quickly wanted to ask you to hit the subscribe button down below and also ring the bell to get notified anytime that I post. I post on Sundays, so you can keep an eye out for that, or also every other day of the week. If you haven't watched all of my other videos before, I highly recommend you watch the video that this video is based on, because it's one of my first videos actually, and it's crazy to me to see the difference in style from like half a year ago to now, how much already has changed and in my opinion improved. So that's a thing that I would really suggest you do. It's really funny to be honest. And other than that, I would like to ask you guys to also check out my socials. The handle on my socials is the same as here on YouTube, so just go ahead and give me a follow on Instagram and TikTok if you want to. I will put the pattern up on my Etsy and also link it down in the description and in the pinned comment if you're interested in that. I know that many people asked me for this pattern specifically, so I'm really, really excited to share this one with you guys. It's available in sizes XXS to 3XL as per usual nowadays. So if you want to check it out, please do so via the links that I just mentioned. And yeah, other than that, thanks so much for watching again, and I'm gonna see you next Sunday. Bye guys!